Welcome, I'm Georgie Frost, and today I'm talking to Tom van Aken, CEO of Avantium. Imagine a world completely free of fossil fuels. That's the vision of Avantium, a pioneer in the emerging industry of renewable and sustainable chemistry based in Amsterdam. Now, it's dedicated to developing breakthrough technologies from 100% renewable resources for use in everyday consumer products and accelerate the transition towards renewable and circular economies. Hello, Tom. Welcome. First of all, tell us more about Avantium and the company's overall mission.
Yes, thank you. We are a pioneer in renewable chemistry. So we're Amsterdam-based, and we are a first-of-a-kind company that really is developing products fully based on renewable feedstocks, but also products that are fully circular. So we help both in terms of addressing climate change, but we also help to address the problems around plastic waste. And we are a trailblazer. We are first-of-a-kind company. We can't do this on our own. So we're working together with companies across the value chain, from farmers, from agricultural companies to the plastics industry, and of course also with consumer goods companies to make sure that the materials that we're developing are used in the right way by consumers and contribute to addressing the problems that I just mentioned.
I want to get into more details as to how you do that, but I also want to address what do we mean by the circular economy, circular, sustainable, bio-based economy?
Yes, what we do is we really envision how the chemical and plastics industry will look like if we stop using petroleum, coal, and natural gas. So you have to start from renewable carbon because we need carbon for making these products. And therefore, we're looking at renewable sources of carbon, such as plant-based sugars, such as forest residues, such as CO2. And we use the carbon of these renewable feedstocks to make plastics and to make chemical products that are fully circular. So if they end up in packaging or they end up in textile products, we want to make sure that they can be reused, that they can be fully recycled, and therefore that they can be used over and over and over again. And if they end up in nature, which unfortunately may happen with everyday products that we are busy with, we need to make sure that they also degrade much faster than the fossil-based plastics that we're using today. So if you look at PEF, which is our Leap product, it degrades 100 times faster than fossil-based plastics. So in that sense, all across the value chain, we really are coming up with these new innovative technologies that help to address these environmental challenges.
Tell us a bit more about your lead product.
Well, the lead product that we're developing and scaling is PEF. It's a new plastic product. It's 100% plant-based, so we don't need one drop of petroleum to make this. It has a very significant lower carbon footprint in comparison to petroleum-based plastics. And ultimately, it's fully recyclable, it's fully circular, and if it ends up in nature, it degrades much faster than these fossil-based plastics. But it's also something which is demonstrably better in comparison to the fossil-based plastics that you and I are using every day. So it has very high gas barriers. So if you have a sparkling drink, it keeps the CO2 very much better in the bottle, about 10 times better than PET. And also in terms of its temperature, stability, and all kinds of performance perspectives, it is really something that's better. And let me just show you an example of what you can do with this. This is a new bottle that we are developing together with Carlsberg. So it is a beer bottle. And beer is a very challenging product to package because it's very sensitive to oxygen, but it's also something that is carbonated. And what we're doing together with a company in Finland, we are developing something that's on the outside, it's paper, but on the inside, it's PEF. So it's our bioplastic that's on the inside. And our PEF bio liner basically makes sure that you can have the shelf life for your beer, but it's something that is fully sustainable. And I think this is just an example of new packaging solutions that are coming to the market. We're trying to scale it. We're trying to work together with major brand owners, with other packaging companies to bring these new packaging solutions into the hands of the consumer.
And what a great example that you've just used there, Tom, to get the consumers on side. You mentioned words like innovative, trailblazer. How? Why? How are you using these words? How do you justify using these words to describe your company? What sets you apart?
Well, if you look at the chemical industry today, it depends for 98% on petroleum and fossil feedstocks. And therefore, it's really time for a new chemical industry that is working on these renewable sources of carbon that I mentioned, like plants, like CO2, and also that converts them into a new set of materials with new functionalities that are also fully circular. And I think in that sense, it really helps if you do not have major installations and plants out there that are running on fossil feedstocks, but that you can free your mind and think of how does the world look like if I think that petroleum is not used as a feedstock anymore. How would we shape that industry? How would we shape that economy? And that is the benefit that we have. Clearly, as a trailblazer, we can't be the only one. If we are the only ones doing it, this would actually be this transition would be way too big. So we need other companies, like-minded companies that we're working with, to work in terms of scaling them, in terms of bringing these products to the consumer, and make sure that they can subsequently be deployed on a global scale.
How do the economics work?
The economics work actually quite similar to, let's say, how other products in the chemical industry have been scaled. So in the beginning, you're producing it on a smaller scale, meaning that material availability is going to be lower and the price is going to be somewhat higher. So for that reason, we are initially focusing on making sure that our products can be used in higher value applications. And once we're scaling the product and go to larger scale production, the economies of scale are kicking in, and the price points actually come to the point where they can compete with existing packaging materials and with existing chemical products. So we have a very clean line of sight to economic viability, but initially we need to make sure that also our products work with the price points that we need at the beginning, while convincing, of course, everyone in the value chain that if you produce this on a very large scale, it can be done in a sustainable way, but also in an economic fashion. And all the data that we have, because ultimately Avantium is a technological company very much based on data, we use life cycle assessments, but you also use very thorough economic modeling. It shows us that we can actually reach the price points to make sure that we can do this in a cost competitive fashion.
Okay, what's Chain Reaction 2030?
Yes, we have, I think we're the first company in the chemical industry that has come with a very clear and ambitious target for the chemical industry. So not only for ourselves, but for the chemical industry. And that is to make sure that the chemical industry is fossil free by 2050. And we want to play our part in that transformation. So we want to shape the technological change that is needed to move away from these fossil feedstocks and move to these renewable sources of carbon. But at the same time, of course, we need to also hold ourselves accountable. So Chain Reaction is actually our sustainability plan that is very specifically describing the targets on how we're measuring our own performance. So we look basically on making sure that our own operations are minimizing waste or come to no waste operations, but also the technologies that we deploy, because we will license our technologies, they should deliver over 1.5 million tons of CO2 savings by 2030. Of course, sustainability is a broader topic, so it's not only the environmental part. So if you look at our Chain Reaction plan, we also have targets in there for how we want to interact with society, for example, by inspiring new generations of scientists and of chemists, but also by having very clear diversity standards for the different parts of the organization. And in that way, we really try to come up with a broad, ambitious, but also holistic plan for how we manage, but also how do we measure and communicate on sustainability across our company.
Be realistic, Tom. Be honest with me. How much work is this going to take across the industry?
you're completely right. It is a phenomenal challenge. And maybe you are more frightened by, this whole idea of climate change. And I'm the entrepreneur, and I'm also looking at this. This really provides enormous opportunities. And it really provides enormous opportunities for companies, for new companies that come up with new technologies. So I think in that sense, this is the time for new companies to come up with these new products, these new, very ambitious ideas. I've been working on this for 15 years, Georgie. So this is not something that it just happened in a few months' time. So I'm well aware of the perseverance and the dedication that is needed to make this into a success. But if you look in the chemical industry, that is something which is new polymers, new plastics. They are invented maybe only every 20 or you have to go back 20 to 30 years to see a new plastic being brought to the market. And I think it just describes, first of all, you need to have a long-term view. This is not just going to happen in a very short time frame, but it also shows you how, in that sense, innovation is needed in this industry to come up with really disruptive change that is required to move away from fossil feedstocks and to address climate change. And I think it's a very exciting time frame, but we need to be well aware it is something really for the long run. It's not something for the lighthearted. This is really something which takes dedication. And what really drives me is that I see more and more organizations, more and more people that want to be on this train and that want to work with us on making this chain happen. So that gives me a lot of energy and a lot of confidence that we can make these new renewable products a success, and that we can ultimately succeed in moving away from petroleum and really drastically reduce CO2 emissions.
You speak a lot about working together and collaboration. These things, this big change that's required isn't going to happen in isolation. So with that in mind, how can governments and policymakers work better with corporations and individuals to promote environmental action, to create a better environment for this to flourish?
I think on one hand, I see very positive signs of change happening. So I think that makes me positive. What I see there are just small steps. And I think it's very logical we start with small steps, but ultimately, I hope politicians understand we need more radical change in order to hit the timelines, as we're running out of time. So in that sense, we need radical change to really also provide basically an opportunity for these disruptive technologies to become successful. And in that sense, clearly, we can't just only look at governments. Governments have to play a role, industry has to play a role, and also consumers have to play a role. And I think we are in the middle of that action. And I think in particular in the chemical industry, we've gone way too slow in terms of moving away from these from petroleum. And there's a big focus now on recycling and going into the circular economy. But I think there needs to be much more emphasis and much more opportunity needs to be given, and incentive needs to be given for these renewable chemistry initiatives and projects to make sure that we can build that we can deploy that, and give it the skill that is required.
Finally, if you had the ears of global leaders of the world, why not, right now, for just 1 minute, what would you say?
Yes, I would tell them that so far, most of the attention by politicians has gone into the energy transition. But if you look at the chemical industry, we have to make sure that we combine that with a materials transition and a feedstock transition. And it's very simple. The future of chemistry is above the ground. So try to think of how we can shape the economy without using petroleum and move to renewable source of carbon, and make sure that in parallel we go to fully circular products. So keep that in mind. The future of chemistry, the future of plastics is above the ground, and help us to actually achieve that ambition.
Tom van Aken, CEO of Avantium, thank you so much.
You're welcome.